All right, first few slides, you guys, if you're familiar with the club at all, you know these first few slides, you probably could present them, but once, as always, I would say for those here in the room tonight, and for those out on Zoom as well here tonight, we thank you for being here. We hope you enjoy yourselves. We hope you learned something interesting. You should tonight. We have some interesting presentations. We hope you make a new friend, and we hope you connect with old friends as well. First thing, as always, is if you haven't already done so, pull out your cell phone and go ahead and put that thing on vibrate. I will do the same as well. All right, are there any visitors here tonight who are bold enough to go ahead and introduce yourselves? We're going to have you do that. It's easy peasy up here, as you can see. What's your name? How'd you find us? What's your astronomy experience? Might not be any. And if you have one, what's your favorite object in or about space? We have a microphone for you because we have people on a Zoom session as well. If you don't speak into a mic, the people on Zoom can't hear you. So Andrea has a microphone. I think there was a hand in the back row back there, Andrea.
Hi, I'm Vamsi. I Googled astronomy club near me, and I think that's how I found you guys. I watch a lot of astronomy stuff on YouTube. I watched the Artemis 2 stuff a lot. That was really cool. What's my favorite thing in space? Oh, I never thought about that. The planet Mars. I don't know. The best I got.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome. Thank you here for being here. Any other visitors here tonight that would like to introduce yourselves? If so, we'll hand you a mic and you can do so. Okay. That will be it then. All right. Thank you for those that did. Okay. Tonight's program. So we have some just our general announcements here coming up in just a moment. Then we'll have Alice come up forward and she'll talk a little bit about public outreach and what we've done in the last month since the last meeting. Then we're going to have a couple of different member presentations. We have tonight, we have Kevin Legore here from the Skywatcher. And as you've seen, he's brought in quite a number of antique scopes, and he's going to talk a little bit about those antique telescopes over there. So that'll be fun. I got a chance to look at some of them as he was bringing them in, and they're cool. I like them. So anyway, thank you, Kevin, for being here. Then Andrea, our vice president, is going to talk a little bit about the mini Messier marathon that went on just a few weeks ago. And then we'll take our short break and a little bit of social time to use the restroom, get some water, whatever. And then we'll have our main presentation tonight, which is Joe Searle from Honeywell, who's standing over there against the windows. And Andrea will go ahead and introduce him more formally in just a little bit later on this evening. So there's our agenda for tonight. General announcements. These first few slides, everybody's seen dozens of times probably by now. So anyway, are you a joiner? If you are, you can always join our club. We appreciate actual paying members because it does pay the bills. Keeps the lights on, keeps food on the back table, allows us to take bus trips down to Kit Peak and things like that. So you can join either at the back table here tonight, or you can join online through our website as well. Our website is super easy to find. You just go to Google or whatever your search engine is. If you like AI, you can use AI. But anyway, you just say, take me to the East Valley Astronomy Club, and it'll show you the website. You can go there and get all sorts of information about the club. So that's available to you. By the way, Brooks, our treasurer, is at the back table. He handles memberships and badges and all sorts of things. And he has to leave at the break tonight. So when we take a break, he'll be taking off right after the break. So if you need to talk to Brooks or see Brooks about anything this evening, do so between now and the end of our first break, our only break. And he'll take care of you because then he's got to take off for the evening. All right. If you'd like to know what's happening here at EVAC, there's several different ways to find that out. The first thing you do is go out to our website. And if you want, you could subscribe to our mailing list. We do not send your email addresses anywhere else, so you don't get a bunch of spam. You'll probably see a half a dozen emails a month from us announcing different things, and that's about it. A few meeting reminders, stuff like that. So anyway, that's one thing you can do to keep kind of plugged into the club. You can also go out to our website, and we have an events and meetings tab out on our website, and it has a calendar. And for any given month, you can see the calendar, and if you see events on any particular calendar day, you simply click on the event and it brings up details about that event. We'll have less and less events as the weather gets hotter and hotter and the nights get lighter and lighter because we just have less to do this time of year. But there'll still be some things out there to see. If you would like to, you can also look at our newsletter. Now, if you subscribe to our mailing list, you automatically get the newsletter once a month. It just pops in your inbox. But you can actually go to our website as well and look up the current newsletter or any other newsletter going back 20 years. So they're all out there on our website as well. Everything I've mentioned so far is one-way communication where the club can communicate with you. What if you want to communicate back to us or to other members and things like that? If you want two-way communication, you can always then join our Facebook page. We have about 1,200 members out there right now. And this is your opportunity to just do what you do with Facebook, communicate with other people. And so, hey, I got a telescope I want to sell, or is anybody going to Picket Post to observe tonight, or anything like that you'd like to post out, you can do so on our Facebook page. If you need a telescope or training, we also have equipment for rent or purchase. So we do have a fairly large rental pool. We rent everything actually very inexpensively. So if you'd like to try before you buy, as the saying goes, you can certainly do that. Just try something out. I had a couple actually email me just this week saying, hey, we'd like to rent something. And so I'll be forwarding them off to Tom here shortly to set up a rental for them. We also have equipment for purchase as well. Tom Jacobs, our properties manager, always is picking up new scopes and telescopes from somebody. People donate all the time. And he checks them out, makes sure they're running well enough to be sold, and then he sells them at pretty much rock bottom prices, usually at least half price. So it's actually pretty inexpensive. In fact, I had someone contact me today that wants to donate something, so I'll be forwarding that to Tom as well. We also have online training if you'd like to. So out on our website, we have a virtual beginners lab. Has all sorts of articles out there you could read to sort of start learning astronomy, learning about telescopes, learning about the night sky, things like that. We also offer online classes here and there throughout the year. We have a member here named James Yoder. He is not here tonight. I'll explain why in a moment, but that is his email address, and he runs hands-on classes. There is a class going right now. It's the basic telescope class that's running right now. It's been going for what? How many weeks now, Andrea? A few weeks, yeah. Okay, and so that one's getting close to being done. But he's starting another class in about a month or two that's actually going to be on planetary photography, and so he'll be running that class as well. So if you're interested, take a picture, jot down that email address, contact James, and you can get signed up for a hands-on class if you'd like to do that. Okay, Alice, you're on. She's running. So anyway, this will be, all right, there you go.
Thank you, Steve. My name is Alice Kloeb, and I am the club's outreach organizer or events coordinator. So a lot of people ask, why should you join EVAC? And I always say, the best thing about it is you can give back to the community. As a member, you can join and give back two ways. First way is just down the sidewalk over here at Greco. So you can volunteer to be a operator or a helper out there. Claude is our manager. Up there is the email for him. If you're interested in volunteering, reach out to him, let him know. He'll contact you and get back to you. All right. And yes, okay. This is me. This is our second way to give back, and that is doing public outreach events at schools, community centers, and HOAs. So basically what we do is we share our love of astronomy with whatever group has asked us to do a star party. The two ways you can volunteer for this, the first one is you could bring your telescope and have an object in mind that you want to share with guests, and have, when they come up, just share facts about what the object is, how far away it is, anything about the object. Ask them, what do they see? that kind of thing. Or if you don't feel comfortable bringing your telescope, I can always use what we call walker helpers. And these are people who help me out by checking on the astronomers, making sure that they're doing all right. Maybe they need a bathroom break or a water, or also helping keep our guests, remind them of telescope etiquette, like no running, no flash photography, no food or drink. So those are the two ways that you can volunteer for our outreach. Usually, well, season right now is winding down. Longer days, hotter nights. Our only outreach from here on until about the end of September will be our Greco Second Friday Star Party. So if you still want to participate or you want to volunteer, can always use telescopes out there as well, sharing the night sky with guests who come to view through Greco. All right, let's move on to, all right, our past events. This was for the Apache Junction Multi-Generational Center. Yeah, we've been doing those on a monthly basis. Claude, who's our manager at Greco, he usually does a presentation, and then following that presentation, we do telescope viewing. It is quite nice and dark out there. They are trying to become a dark sky city, so that helps out a lot. All right, and then, oh yeah, this is our Second Friday Star Party that I was telling you about. The weather was pretty iffy. Now, I'm not normally a gambling woman, but the weather report said at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that there was going to be a break, a small window, all right? And honestly, I was getting ready to call it at 2, but because the weather said that small break, I said, okay, actually, Gordon, he's an excellent advisor, said, why don't we wait till 4 and see if that little window's still there? And it was. It had just been bumped back another hour. So I felt like being a gambling woman that night and said, hey, let's go ahead and have the party and see what happens. So thank you to all of those who gambled with me. It turned out we did have a nice window, clear skies, clear enough. The clouds were a little bit, but not too bad. We had a great crowd. And the highlight of the night was Gordon's daughter and son-in-law brought our new grandson by. So that's him down there. That was his first star party. So highlight of my night. Highlight of Gordon's too. All right, and then this was pretty cool. Now, I believe, is it every year, Steve, that they hold this? All right, so there's the Fountain Hills Dark Sky Festival. It was the first time I had ever been, and I just went to participate as a guest, all right? I didn't volunteer or anything. So Gordon and I went. What a fabulous event. I highly recommend you attend it next year. So their facility up there, it's a Fountain Hills Dark Sky Center, I believe is what it's called. They have this beautiful dome that's going to be a planetarium. They have a gorgeous dome that's going to have, well, it has a telescope in it right now. Awesome what do you want to, auditorium that they were working on. They had a gift shop that you go into the gift shop. How many telescopes were there? Like 30, 40 telescopes, Steve, would you guess? 25 to 30. There were a lot of telescopes, everything from a little sea star all the way up to those gigantic Dobsonians. The coolest thing for me was I got to see all of our volunteers there. So Steve was there volunteering, David was there volunteering, Josh was there volunteering, and Steve Feist was there volunteering. And then another highlight of mine was we got to meet astronaut Susan Kilrain. Kilrain, I believe is how you pronounce her name. Yeah, and Gordon actually, her and Gordon know a friend together. So they know yet another astronaut. So that was pretty cool. It was a really, really fun event. So again, highly recommend attending. Also tonight, you see the lovely woman next to David over here. That's his wonderful wife, Joni, who I got to meet that night. Tonight, I would like to publicly recognize and thank all of the significant others, spouses, kids, fathers, anybody who supports their loved one's love of astronomy. I mean, Joni didn't have to be there, but she was there all night supporting him. And I thought that was just so wonderful. So, and all of you on Zoom, I want to recognize your significant others as well. Thank you so much. So round of applause for them, for supporting them. Thank you. If you have any questions about outreach, just come and see me at the break and I'm happy to answer any of them. All right, Steve, I'll hand it back over to you. Yes. There's a solar viewing on the 25th here at Greco. At Greco, all right. 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, all right.
So David, is that weather permitting? Okay, so anyway, okay. All right, thank you, Alice. Appreciate that. Special events, we have a few to mention that we've mentioned a few times, just reminders mostly. First of all, last month, of course, the Messier Marathon, sponsored by the SAC group, the SAC Club, Searle Astronomy Club. They had to postpone because we had that like freak 100 and some degree heat for a week. And none of us wanted to go out there and sweat to the oldies, so we didn't go. So it's actually happening now. So I was kind of wondering how many people we might have there tonight. It's a pretty good group because I thought some people might sneak off to the night one of the Messier spring party out there. So it looks like not too many people might have went. It's also going on tomorrow night, so I'm not sure who's all planning on maybe heading out there tomorrow night. Looks like he is. So a few of you, I see some hands going up. So yeah, there'll be some people from EVAC out there tomorrow night as well. I am working Greco tomorrow night, so I will not be out there tomorrow night. We also have coming up a little bit later on in the year, the Hyman Rim Ranch. So I'm just mentioning that here. It's not till September, so it's a ways off. We will be signing up people for that a little bit later on. It is limited. It's actually at a gentleman's ranch, literally out there. It's a beautiful home, but there's limited space. And so we can only really accommodate about 45 people at that particular party. We actually have our All AZ party is still on the tap for October, as you can see up there as well. So we have that. We also have 2 weeks from tomorrow, we have our EVAC group bus trip up to Kitt Peak. And right now that is sold out, but the good news is that Andrew, who's coordinating that for us this year, was able to get them to bump it up to from 50 to 56 people. So we were able to take 6 people off the waiting list and actually get them seats on the bus. The reason we were able to do that is Andrew called the bus company. It turned out the bus actually had 56 seats and not 50. And so he called then Kitt Peak and they said, sure, we'll take 6 more people, not a problem. So we should have a lot of fun. We'll all meet here at 6:45 in the morning. I'm already yawning just thinking about that, but it should be a fun day. And Brandon, I don't think I saw Brandon in the crowd tonight. So, but I did see Brooks Andrews, stand up. You guys are on the back wall there. So red shirt is Andrew. He's the one who's been coordinating this trip out to Kitt Peak. He has been the mastermind behind it all. So thank you, Andrew. And he has been working closely with Brooks, our treasurer, to make sure that the payment options work correctly, and with our website administrator, Brandon, who's not here tonight. So I just wanted to call out those 3 gentlemen for the great job they did on this event. So thank you very much. No. All right, let's see. Member presentations. I am going to change our schedule just a hair on the fly tonight. So we're going to have Andrea come up. And she's going to do her presentation pretty much now. Then we're going to take our break, and then we're going to have Kevin Legore and Joe Searle go back to back because I just got slides that I need to add into the slide deck, and I'll do that during the break. So that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, let's go ahead and get you queued up. There you go.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Well, as Steve already mentioned, the Saguaro Astronomy Club Messier Marathon had to be postponed. So James and I started texting. We knew we were going to go to Picket Post, and so we thought, let's host our own little impromptu mini marathon. So we just pulled an all-nighter that night. We invited anybody who wanted to come out and join us to spend the evening with us. James printed up some checklists for people who wanted to go more competitively. Others just enjoyed an evening of observing and imaging. But here's some pictures of folks that were there. We had at least 20 people there. We had plenty of snacks. I set up a hot beverage station, and surprisingly, it was comforting. I mean, once that sun goes down, 65 degrees is chilly for us Phoenicians. But we had a wonderful time. We started out with 2 categories, manual observing and go-to. But then our good friend Jeff, his mount conked out on him, and he had to switch to manual mode, which made me feel convicted as well. I'm like, okay. So I switched to manual as well. So we have 1 category for me and Jeff. Anyway, so as you can see, in our go-to category, David Perriott found 98 of the 110 items. Way to go, David. And Nathan Esky found 69. Way to go, Nathan. For manual star hopping, that means no computer, no punching in the numbers and letting your scope take you there. John Jansen found 96 just in that night. Yes. Where are you, John? Yes. And James Yoder, who's not here tonight, he found 74 objects. And then Jeff and I brought it in at 62, 63, but we had so much fun. It was a wonderful evening. If you've never been to Picket Post, I invite you to join us. We'll have a group up there tomorrow night, as a matter of fact. And if you'd like more information on how to get there, you can go to James's artcentrics.com. If you look under the category outings, you will find information on how to get to Picket Post. It's just a sweet little site, and it has bathrooms. So that's really good. But anyway, thank you for your time tonight. I will turn it back over to Steve, and I hope to see you at Picket Post sometime. Thank you. All right, tonight we are joined by a true friend of EVAC, Kevin Legore. Kevin is a well-known figure in the amateur astronomy community, especially for his expertise in equipment and his dedication to teaching others. Currently serving as product specialist for Skywatcher USA, he is also the driving force behind Focus Astronomy Outreach, where he has dedicated his career to sharing the wonders of the night sky with the public. Kevin also hosts the What's Up webcast on the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel every Friday morning, where he features monthly astronomical observing and imaging guides, special guest interviews with industry experts and ambassadors, and he even had a NASA astronaut on there, special topics in astronomy and astrophotography, DIY projects, and more, much more. Kevin does a lot for our club and for the amateur astronomy community. We are lucky to have his expertise and his passion with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Legore. Thanks, Kevin.
Okie dokie. So thank you I need to just get that introduction so I can just send it to people because I hate writing things about myself. As you know, my name is Kevin Legore. Some of you I know, some of you I've met in the dark, some of you I haven't met before, but thanks for coming. So I own Focus Astronomy. We do a lot of resort events, private events. We also do a lot of outreach. Been doing Focus since 2011, and it's grown into this big thing, bigger than I could think of. Last year, a friend of mine had this 4-inch Unitron for sale, and obviously being a younger person in astronomy, a lot of my friends are older than I am. But it was really cool to go to their house and see what they grew up liking, the Sears telescopes, Tasco, Unitron, things that inspired them. And I thought that was really kind of cool because I looked up to these people. So I wanted a piece of that. And that started a huge, huge problem, which has grown. And also working in the telescope industry, I have a lot of friends who have access to a lot of things. But the goal of this whole Living History project is to keep the history alive. I have a big problem when you go to a museum, it's like, wow, that's really cool. That's it. You want to use it, you want to see it, you want to look through what this thing, if this thing could speak, what could it tell you? So there's some of the living history stuff is actually here. 2 of them are not, but I'll show you. And I'm sure as you've looked through the cases, it's like, well, that's cool, that's old, that's old. And then you get to the Takahashi at the end, it's like, that's not old. But we'll talk about that. So when you get into the world of vintage and antiques, technically vintage starts at 20 years old. 20 to 99 years old is vintage and 100 plus is antique. I didn't make the rules, that's just what the rules are. So, first off, let's talk about the Takahashi. So Takahashi has been making telescopes since right after about World War II. And obviously they're world renowned for what they are. This particular telescope is special because it came from a friend of mine. He actually gave the telescope to me. It is a TOA 130F, an original. So it's over 20 years old. And I'm sure many of you are like, how do I get a TOA 130 for free? Well, let's hit the brakes because this guy had problems. This is what the lens looked like when I got it. This is a coating failure, which I have seen several Takahashi TOA 130s do. I have friends who work at Takahashi and they will probably kill me for showing this picture. But anyway, they'll get over it. If you go to buy a Takahashi TOA 130, there are 2 generations that exist. This is Gen 1 and the current ones are Gen 2, which do not have coating problems. How do I tell them apart? You'll notice the ring around the front objective of the lens has orange text. That's a Gen 1. The current production are white. That's a Gen 2. So if you're in the market, these are amazing. Look for the white text. Don't get the red text. Now, when I got this thing, I had no idea what to do with it. We tried polishing it off, which made it worse. The star test looked like a freaking firework. It was ridiculous. It was a kaleidoscope, basically, which broke my heart because it's a Takahashi. And this is what it looked like. That's before, and this is after. So this telescope, and the reason why it's so special to me, was refigured by Roger Sergioli of the U of A Mirror Lab. Roger is a world-renowned optician. You even say his name in company of Roland Christian from astrophysics, and even Roland will say he is one of the best in the world. Very humble guy, very quiet guy, but he killed this thing. So as you can see, it is now back to working order. This guy doesn't go out too much because it's very delicate because we had to basically disassemble it. This is a very strange triplet refractor. They're very wide air gap lenses and their alignment is super finicky. So I wanted to bring it here because it's one of the newer ones, but it's special because it's been touched and worked on by a true master of his craft. Now we're going to go further. Unitron. Many of you probably know what Unitron is, other than it's a long soda straw refractor, essentially. They made plenty of refractors from 40 millimeter all the way up. There is one 9-inch Unitron, which is in Japan. Most common are the 60, 75, 102, which we have here, and then the rarer ones are the 5-inch and 6-inch. I was at NEAF last weekend, and there was a 5-inch on display there. They're very, very rare, and it's huge. So this is a 4-inch F15 from 1960s. This is the one that started the Living History Project. Funny enough, my friend that I got this from bought it from EVAC. So it's come full circle. So this one had a monster dent in the dew shield. We kind of buffed it out a little bit, repainted it. Lens was completely disassembled and cleaned. It was missing a bunch of parts, and the best thing about having a 3D printer is you can just make stuff for vintage telescopes. So made finder brackets and all kinds of that. So this has actually been out to a couple different school programs. It's really kind of cool to show kids the moon through a telescope that showed people the moon during the Apollo era. So it's cool to be able to look through such an instrument. And that's what I have kind of the awe of when using these, is if this could tell a story, what would it tell you? The case was built by a good friend of mine. His name's Ron. Ron Bowe. He's also an astronomer. He lives out in Glendale, where I am. For those of you who don't know where Glendale is, way over there. So, the Unitrons are a lot of fun. They're not incredibly expensive either. So if you want to have like a taste of the vintage world, you can find them for not a lot of money. But the 4-inch ones are kind of fun. This one does great on solar. It does good on the moon, and it doesn't weigh that much. It's just awkward and long. Of course, then I had the case made, and now it's like a boat anchor. So it's a beautiful case, though. Now, the holy grail amongst probably all refractor collectability is the Alvin Clarks. If you've ever been to Lowell Observatory, that's a Clark. Now, the Clarks are well known for their optics, and they've made many historical telescopes throughout their career, including the 24-inch Lowell, the Clark up at Lowell Observatory, the 26 US Naval Observatory, the 36-inch Lick, and of course, the largest one in the world, a 40-inch, the Great Refractor at Yerkes. All of these are actually documented in a book called Artist in Optics, and there are 2 versions of that book, and they're both on display in the case there. The older one just gives you the history, and the newer one is updated with a master list of all the owners of the current Alvin Clarks. So you're actually able to track down the lineage of your refractor. I was lucky enough, because I work from home and I'm screwing around online sometimes, to be like, Alvin Clark refractor for sale, because everyone wants to know, how'd you find it? Alvin Clark refractor for sale. Right now, there's nothing. This guy was sitting up in an antique shop in Oregon and had been there for years, which is odd because they go like that. This is a 4-inch F-15 that was made in 1880. It's one of 3 that were made that year. I don't know where its 2 sisters are, but they're somewhere in the world. There are 2 types of Clark refractors as well. There are dated Clarks, and then there are undated Clarks. This is a dated Clark where the actual year it was produced is on the actual nameplate on the back. And if you have a chance to look at the nameplate, the writing on the back of it is gorgeous. What's really cool, and probably the most terrifying thing I've ever done with a telescope, is taking the lens apart to clean it. There are little bubbles in the lens which don't matter, but what's really cool is they still have polishing compound on the edge of the glass. I had some people asking me earlier, do I use it? Absolutely do I use these things. It's like a history book. This thing handles 400 power. I will throw it up against some of the best refractors out there, and it holds really well. It's just amazing what they were able to do, and it's completely uncoated. There's no fancy coatings on this thing. I could clean it with Windex if I really wanted to, which the thought of that is terrifying. But here are the 2 different books. If you want to read about it, you can find the one on the right is the newer version. They're not expensive, but they're not in print anymore, so you might have to scroll through Astromart and find it. The original one is on the left. That's more of a collector's thing. It has a lot, both books share the same lineage. It's just the newer one has the list of refractors. So if you actually want to go track a Clark down, go for it. So. Okay, and here's the Clark, which, yay, picture when the real thing is right over there. What was really cool about this is it's not only the telescope. If you look over in the case, it came with the original 4 eyepieces and the prism. And they work really well. Works better with Naglers, but it works really good with the originals. So I have adapters to use 1.25" stuff on it because a Clark focuser is 1.36 inch. It's this oddball size, but it's a beautiful refractor. I'll have to bring it out to one of the star parties one night when the moon's up or something like that, but it's a fun one to look through. Two of the telescopes that are not here are Broadhurst and Clarkson refractors. This is one of the oldest companies in the world producing telescopes. They're still around, but they've evolved into different optics at this point. So these two were actually gifted to me by a friend of mine in California who has way more money than he should. He's a Zeiss collector, which is all you have to know at this point. So I don't have a Zeiss because those guys are nuts. It's high dollar stuff. So this is one of them. This is a 94 millimeter f/16. It has a Zambra lens in it from the late 1800s. The lens is actually this is the lens right there on my hand. It's all brass. It's gorgeous. Unfortunately, the astigmatism is horrendous on this thing. And I have had two opticians look at it, and we've basically come to the conclusion that it's terminal. So we can't do anything with it. We did think about refiguring it, but the thought of refiguring a 140-year-old lens was, they didn't want to do it. So it's in Tucson right now. It's going to come back home. It'll get mounted on the wall as fish that I caught, I guess. But it's a really strikingly pretty telescope when it's out in the backyard. This was actually done by Moonraker, which they actually did the 8-inch that's up at Lowell Observatory. They don't make these anymore. So the lens is original, the focuser is original, but the rest of the tube is modern. It's just made to look, steampunky. This is the other one, the 80 millimeter. It's made to look vintage. Actually, it's made to look antique. It's actually vintage. It's a 1950s model. This is a really cool one, except the eyepieces are really funky. They're 1.25 inches, but they're threaded. So they thread into it. And it only works with its diagonal. So this one is in the living room right now. I'm sure the cats are just staring at it right now is what's happening. But it's a fun scope. It's the hardest of the three, the collection to use at this point. So it's just more of a showpiece at this point. But the tripod's like this tall, so that's why it didn't come, because disassembling it's a whole thing. This one, Goers, this one was the latest one to be acquired. One of the former owners, I think, or upper level people of SBIG, Mike George, this was his. Mike passed away last year, unfortunately, and through my connections in the telescope industry, I was able to get a hold of this from the estate. I have never seen another 60. It's a 60 f/15-ish. And digging back, these are actually pre-Zeiss. So this is a Zeiss icon lens. Probably around 1920s is what we've dated it to. If you want, I can show you either later. I have the original 4 eyepieces. They're in a blue velvet lined case with the original solar filters that press onto it. So it's kind of a neat one as well. Out of all the telescopes I own, this produces the best image of the moon I have ever seen. It looks like HDR. The Mare in this thing are insanely nice. It's wild, and it has fungus between the lens, and it still throws up a nice image. So, but you have to sit on the ground to use it, so you're kind of like this. But it's a cool scope to use. It's a 60, but Jupiter looks good, all that. The cool thing about this telescope is the case is underneath the tables. It all shrinks down and fits into one case. It was like an education telescope, so they'd send it back with people, and they could use it. Okay, this one has a story. Most of them do. This one is interesting. So Evian Paris was founded in 1832 in France, but eventually it changed its name to Evian, or it was Evian first, and then it turned into Evian Paris in the late 1920s. This is the last one we'll talk about real quick so I can hand it over, but I want to talk about this one for just a second. This telescope belonged to a friend of mine who lives out in Wickenburg, and he bought this in a store in Prescott in 1997, and it's been in his house ever since. And no one knows the history of it. I am working with Kevin Schindler, the historian of Lowell Observatory, with this telescope because this telescope is strikingly similar to Robert Burnham Jr.'s telescope that was given to him by, what was the famous, Barry Goldwater, when he found his first comet. There's a picture of it from the New Times right there. So what's interesting about this is Robert Burnham was from Prescott. This was found in Prescott in 1997. When my buddy obtained it, he wanted to know who the seller was. They would not tell him who the seller was. So there's a couple little lineups here. And now Lowell Observatory is incredibly interested to find out if this is actually Burnham Jr.'s Barry Goldwater telescope, which would be awesome. And if that happens, I probably won't own it anymore because it'll probably go to Lowell because they're all over it right now. Now, Robert Burnham's niece lives in Sun City, the last living relative of Robert Burnham Jr. We're working out a time for her to come visit this so we can see if there's any way we can actually confirm this was Robert's telescope. Because if that's the case, that's a huge win for the Arizona astronomy community. So that's really cool. It's a neat telescope. It's incredibly hard to use because you got to look straight through the thing. So if you like yoga, this is the scope for you. About snap my neck with this thing, but it's a neat telescope. But yeah, so they're all here. If you have any questions, you're welcome to look. Really quick. There's some books over there you probably want to know about. The two large books, those are E.E. Barnard Photographic Atlas of Selected Regions of the Milky Way. Those are one of 700 original copies printed in the early 1900s. E.E. Barnard selected each print by hand. So he has hand-built this book personally. And then the other book is all the handwritten and all hand-drawn star charts that go along with it. And then lastly, the small green book, that is a first edition 1906 Mars and Its Canals book by Percival Lowell. In there was a 2-page personalized handwritten letter from Percival Lowell to the owner of the book, talking about various places here in Arizona. So lots of history sitting over there. Feel free to ask questions. Don't run off with any of the eyepieces, I will tackle you. But hopefully one time soon, we'll all be able to check them out and look at it, but I will hand that off. So.
Does anyone have questions for Kevin right now? All right, I am so excited to introduce our next speaker, someone who is helping build the future of space travel right here in the East Valley. Joe Searle comes to us from Honeywell Aerospace. He grew up in a large family on a farm in Northwest Indiana. Joe earned a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical and Astronautical Engineering from Purdue University before starting his career at Allied Signal, which is now Honeywell Aerospace. Over the past 30 years, Joe has held roles in structural engineering, project engineering, program management, and business management, earning his Master of Business Administration from Arizona State University along the way. He currently works in Honeywell's Space Division as the Senior Product Line Director for the Human Space and Control Moment Gyroscope product lines. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest, Joe Searle.
I'll apologize in advance. This is stuff I get geeked out about this stuff. So I may drone on a little bit and you may have to pull me off. So a little bit about Honeywell and where I work. Not too much because I want to get to the good stuff. Here in the Valley and around the world, we do a lot of really cool stuff. Every U.S. manned mission we've been on, and you're going to see a lot of details about that. We support a lot of defense. We support a lot of commercial. If it's in space, there's a pretty good chance that there's been some representation from Honeywell on there. We are all over the world. I'm Kevin. I'm all the way in Glendale too, so I know I feel your pain on that one. But here in the Valley, we get contributions from Tempe, Torrance, all around the world, in Canada, in the Czech Republic. It's kind of nice. And a lot of the things that you're going to see today come from Glendale, but also a lot from around of our locations around the world. All right. So this is the stuff I'm going through real quick because I want to get the good stuff. We make a lot of stuff. That's what this says. But really what you're going to see is when I go around and some of the things that we've done to contribute to some of the manned missions, I was looking at it, I think each one of these areas gets touched in one shape or form where it's gone to either a manned mission or a mission of astronomy, which is kind of neat. So all around the world, all these different things, there's so many different things you can do that need to be done in order to move the mission forward. Okay. Sure. Oh, that is louder. Got it. All right. I was asked to talk about human space, but if I'm going to talk to the Astronomy Club, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do in some of the celestial area as well, because there are some neat things that we do. The first is the Hubble telescope. So if you were to go to our Glendale facility where I work and you go in the lobby, you're going to see this sucker right here, which is one of the reaction wheels used in Hubble. So reaction wheel is basically a big flywheel, and it keeps the spacecraft, the satellite, the telescope, whatever it might be, pointing in the right direction. You spin it up in one direction, the satellite is going to spin in the opposite direction by a little bit amount. So what you see, everyone knows this Hubble's had overall an amazing history, but it's been a little bit of a checkered start where they had the wrong mirror, they had things going wrong. So you had a lot of shuttle missions there to service it. And that bottom left picture, you can see two astronauts actually replacing, at first I was hoping it was this one, but not, but it replacing a reaction wheel, not because it was broken, but because they were up there and they wanted to swap it out. These things have been functioning for 24 years without problem. It's one thing that we do. We do hard stuff, and keeping something like that in space going for a long time is pretty amazing. So this was in the Smithsonian for a little bit, and then Smithsonian didn't want any more, so they had an auction. Some guy probably bought it for $100, and he contacted us and said, "Hey, I got some of your hardware. Would you like it?" And we paid a lot more than $100, but it's neat to have around. Next is James Webb. I know almost nothing. This is all optics, and so there's probably a lot of people here who know a lot more about this than I do. I had to talk to some of my friends out in Cambridge near Toronto, because this is where they've done that. But they've done a lot of the fine sensing, the pointing that goes along that makes James Webb amazing what it is. It's sitting in what's called the Earth Moon Lagrange Point 2, or L2, which is a neat little area there where they take advantage of the balance between gravity and the centrifugal forces to have an area where it's always going to be shaded by the Earth. So that's why you don't burn up the sensors on there. It hasn't been around nearly as long as Hubble, but it's been amazing. Some of the pictures have come on there. I was going through, wanted to throw a couple good ones on there, and I just ran out of, I didn't want to make the pictures too small. It's been an amazing thing. And then there's the rest. Lots and lots of a lot of different things where we've gone to explore, not with people, but to learn more about planets, get better pictures. The one in the top left is one of my favorites because it's one of the first programs I worked at when I was here, the OSIRIS-REx. That one actually went down into Bennu, which was a small asteroid, and grabbed a sample and dropped it off at Earth, and it was working so well that they're sending it off to another asteroid on a close flyby on there. Working amazing. Lots of things on Mars. You can see basically I've got things only out through Jupiter, but we've got some things that are beyond there. I just didn't want to shrink it down in there. But lots of neat missions to help not only see things better, but to learn better and to get us further on there. All right, so now to the human space stuff. Wanted to start off talking about the past. Things that have amazing programs that have started, that have already completed. So the very first one is Project Mercury. We've done a lot of things. These are all things that my company has done, not just here and not just under the Honeywell name. It could be under the Bendix name. It could be under Sperry's name. You know, that's one of the advantages of having all these mergers is I get to claim a lot of different companies, a lot of different things. But so Mercury was our first foray into space, first American into space. When you look at these things, how quickly things moved back then, especially when you see me talking about Gemini and Apollo, how it's not one launch every 4 years, it's 4 to 6 launches every year. It's amazing how much they were pushing the envelope and how brave those astronauts were given the state of what they were doing. But we did a lot of neat things in here. So we built the system that stabilizes the spacecraft to make sure it's pointing in the right way. The life support system, basically that was just something to scrub the CO2 and to make sure that the oxygen and the temperature and the pressure were what they should be on there, as well as a really neat thing, that big picture in the middle there, the Earth path indicator is basically a wonderful clock type of mechanism where they would calibrate it and it had just different gears. It would tell them where over the Earth they were at any given time. Lots of neat things on there. This was amazing, groundbreaking stuff where, if you recall, we were, in the space race with the Soviet Union and we were losing. And so it was really important that we got started, and this was the first start. Then went on to Project Gemini, and Gemini was one where they were getting ready for Apollo. That's what it was. It was a proving ground for the moon. 2 astronauts, and if you would ever see a picture of the 2 astronauts sitting there, they had 0 room. They were really cramped. There were a couple of hairy moments where things went wrong, but they pulled things out. But sorry, I was looking at the numbers here. So you can see over the course of basically 2 years, there were 10 manned flights. It's amazing that they were able to there. So Honeywell contributed, once again, the environmental control system, things that helped with the air. These were longer missions, so that became a little bit of a harder task because now you had people going in there, I think, for up a week or 2 on there doing lunar excursions. The gyro package and the inertial measurement telling them where they're going, as well as a lot of electronics on there. And the Gemini worked very well, which led to the Apollo program. And we are all over this place, and there's so many neat things on here. So the big pictures, the 2 panels, this is the panel from the command module, and then the left is the panel from the lunar module. And we basically made most of the components on there. I've called out a few on there. It's scary. All those nice pictures I found were from auction sites. You can go and you can buy Apollo hardware, I guess if you have enough money and the good timing on there. So it's not just telescopes that you can go out and get on there. The hand controllers you see over there are the things they use to guide the spacecraft both around and to the lunar surface and back, which is super neat. And then at the bottom is the environment control system. And if for those of you who either read the book or seen the movie Apollo 13, I've got the picture of the famous workaround. This is the square part is the Honeywell carbon dioxide scrubber, and that's how they wrapped it up to make it fit into the lunar module circular one. So not exactly as it was intended to be, and I think NASA learned a lesson about standardization after that. But pretty neat that even in a kind of a backhanded way, we were part of that history. And then so after they been to the moon, they wanted to start having more of an extended stay in space. So Skylab was born. It was not very glamorous. It was basically an unspent Saturn V upper stage that they converted. Couple of neat things here is the very, as I said, I'm both human space and control moment gyros was our very first control moment gyro was part of it. And the CO2 scrubber. This was the first time when either in Apollo, Mercury, Gemini, they used filters, basically things that the carbon dioxide would go into, it would trap it, and when it was filled with carbon dioxide, you throw it out and you'd use another one. When you're spending long times up in space, that's not very viable. So you have to find something that can scrub the CO2 and get regenerated. And that was the world's first one. And that came out of our Torrance facility. And then Space Shuttle. We are all over it, although you can't see it, but Space Shuttle was the very first US spacecraft with what they call the glass cockpit. Everything wasn't balls and mechanical switches and stuff like that. You could actually see that. And this right here is from the shuttle. This is one of the multifunctional display units. You see 7 or 8 of them on there. So if you, it's heavy. I don't know how that thing got off the ground with this thing on there. And you look at it, you're like, it's a TV. It's a pretty expensive TV even back then. So we made a lot of the glass cockpit, some of the hand controllers again, and the thrust controllers. What's amazing about this is there were 5 working shuttles that made it to space. And you can see of that 135 missions. And obviously there were the 2 tragedies mixed in there, but it was an amazing machine for what it was built to do. The space station doesn't exist if the shuttle wasn't there because nothing was big enough to do that. The number of astronauts it could hold on there. This is probably the first break to, I'll say, modern space travel on there, even though it has been retired. Okay, so now I'm going to start talking about some of the present programs. This is a shot from just the just completed Artemis II mission, one of my favorite moonrise shots. I had to go through a lot to find one that I thought was captured on there. Just amazing on there. And so we'll start talking about some of the things that are still going on. The International Space Station is celebrating its 26th year of operation of continuous manned presence, which is incredible. I don't think it has been, but a lot of people say it should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, and I firmly support that because of while we're looking to kill each other, the Soviet Union and then Russia with us side by side, it was purposely built so that neither country could live without the other. They were dependent. They were supposed to be dependent to make sure that we got along on there. Honeywell makes over 40 products, a lot more than that if you start counting small details on there on the space station. This is one of the 48, what they call multiplexer demultiplexers, MDMs. They're essentially computers that take signals, square them down, multiple signals, square them onto one so they can be transmitted and break them out there. There's 24 of these on the outside of the station, 24 inside. I think the one in the picture there, you can see a little bit of flange in there because I think they use a robotic arm to help replace that. The carbon dioxide removal assembly is something that's been scrubbing the CO2 out of the air for 26 years. Many of you know Arizona Senator Mark Kelly and his twin brother Scott were astronauts. Scott wrote a book about his year on the space station, and he uses a lot of 4-letter words for that system. He did not, it kept him alive for 26 years, which was amazing, but it had its faults. It caked up, the absorbent in there caked up a lot. It wasn't very easy to maintain. And he probably spends 20% of the book talking about carbon dioxide and how it needs to be done better. And we will be. I'll talk about that later on. We do that. We're working on a better way on there. But in the end, it's kept people alive for that long. Everything else on there, from the mechanical things that keep the solar arrays where they should be, the common birthing mechanism, that anything that births to the space station, which is the ones where they have to have the arm to bring it in there, uses our equipment on there. A lot of the thermals, the pumps, we've got this big picture of all the things we provide on the space station, but it's too small to see everything, so I had to cut it down. But this is still going on. We do not manufacture any new hardware from this stuff, but we get a lot of stuff from the shuttle, from the space station down. When something needs repairs, refreshed, or whatever, they'll bring it down on one of the spacecraft that can take things down, doesn't burn up, send it back to us. We try to, Humpty Dumpty it back all together again. Maybe using 2 things on there and send it back up so it can be used as sparing or for actual stuff on there. So it's neat to work on something that's been so long lived on there. And then this is probably my favorite, because I led this program for about 5 years when they were developing a lot of the hardware and producing the hardware that was just completed on the recent Artemis II. When Andrea asked me to do this and we talked about the timing, I was like, oh, this is either gonna be great timing if the mission goes well, or it's really gonna be, I'm gonna have to bow out of it if things don't go well. So thankfully it went well. So we make a lot of really neat things on Orion. So essentially the whole cockpit we make. So this is a mock-up of the cockpit. These are the translational hand controllers. This is what the spacecraft uses to go up, down, back, forth, left, right. The rotational hand controllers that they use to spin any direction. The cursor device. These are display panels that you've probably seen, as well as there's 7 different switch panels, as well as a lot of the vehicle management computer, which is the main brains of the spacecraft. The barometric altimeter, which they use to determine when they should deploy the chutes. So it's kind of important on there. So in all, a lot of different things on there. This is a picture from the mission of pilot Victor Glover piloting using a lot of our hardware on there. So I stood there and it was kind of Truman Showish for me the whole time it was going on. I was monitoring it on the side, just watching what happens, even as things would float by. But really neat to see this stuff go. You can use this hardware up to 5 different missions. So it's not, you'll hear about the SLS where they send it up and it's expended in there. A lot of this stuff when it comes back, now it's back, it will be recaled and used on probably Artemis 4, Artemis 5. So you'll see this stuff again on there. I will tell you, it is, from being involved in there, it is NASA. NASA's a fantastic customer, but they over-design everything for a purpose. These display units are meant to be able to be dunked in water. So something that goes up in space is waterproof. There's things that are going up in space that in weightlessness have to be able to handle a 150-pound load on there in case an astronaut kicks off on there. When we were making the displays that we'd bring, there were a bunch of astronauts would come in and they would look at it and they would say, that's the wrong shade of green. And so we'd have to dial it in. Or all the switch panels, because they're meant to work with gloves, they would flip the switches and say, I need that to be 25% stiffer, that one 10% looser, whatever. And it's yes, because this is what's going to keep you alive. So it's incredible how much work that went into this stuff. And it was so neat to see it on there. This Artemis 2 was the first time they actually had the cockpit stuff, because it's the first time there were people on there. You will notice, if you follow it, that the toilet is not listed in our stuff. So we're good. It's even when it works, if you Google the Christina's tour of the toilet, they say they have to wear a hearing protection when they use it. So it's, even when it works, it's something on there. But if you've got time, you can Google how to fly Orion. You'll see Victor Glover and Reed Wiseman talk about all this stuff and how they use it to fly that. So, and just about everything, including the software they talk about, came from Honeywell. So this is stuff I really get excited about. You'll notice as the missions become newer, actual flown hardware, because mission's over, still going, so kind of demo, and plastic here. But this is one of the first models we made to try to make sure that we were designing the rotational hand controller correctly. So to make sure that it's got the right movements and stuff like that on there. So feel free to take a look at that when we're done. And then there's the kind of the grab bag miscellaneous. NASA has been suffering from a case of not knowing what they want to be when they grow up for a number of years. They changed their mission. I love working with NASA, but they changed their mission. They changed their priorities. So you'll see things like the commercial transport, which has been amazing. SpaceX has been amazing. Dragon's been amazing. Boeing has not been so amazing. But you're going to see not a lot of Honeywell products on here. That's because predominantly we do what's hard. And I don't mean to demean this, but the trips to and from the space station are no longer really hard. They're meant to be cheap, reliable, and these guys do it great. So the things that we provide are things that are high volume things to us. I've got the potentially coming but not covered stuff because NASA is still trying to figure out what's going on. So, you know, the Lunar Gateway was going to be this orbiting, basically small space station around the moon. That was recently canceled, reprioritized to focus on lunar base, which if it sticks is going to be amazing. So if nothing else, we want consistency. So wherever NASA goes, we're going to be on there, but we need to make sure that we know that they know what's going on. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future now. What we're working on to ensure the next round of exploration for humans. Talk a little bit about deep space and some of the challenges. So deep space is anything that's beyond Earth's orbit. And one of the biggest challenges is going to be radiation and temperature. You get outside of Earth's nice protection sphere, like where the space station's at, and radiation is it's just amazingly difficult. When we got a debrief from NASA and Lockheed about how our hardware worked during Artemis 2, they couldn't have been happier about everything it did, but even then there were still radiation upsets, single event upsets where a photon comes in, hits something, blanks the hardware, you have to reboot it and go on. That's why there's at least 2 of everything that's important. And then you go deeper, you go into Mars, and it becomes very, very tough. So it's not just the people, but also the hardware that needs to be hardened for radiation and for temperature. But what I'm going to focus a lot on here is distance. I like to use this type of comparison. So if you were to equate the distance from the Earth to the space station and say and equate that to where we're at here in the library to downtown Chandler. You know, so if you're here, or if you leave here and go to Chandler and you're hungry, you can do Uber Eats or something like that. You can get food. It's not a big deal. Now, under that scenario, you want to go to the moon, you're going to Sydney, Australia. All of a sudden, you take a trip to Sydney. Yeah, if you're just going to go there, go there and back, you could probably pack your food. It's really inconvenient. It's not the end of the world. You want to go to Mars, you're going around the world 275 times. So it is just that much. You don't think of it, but it's that much farther than anything. So the space station is really, really hard. Moon is really, really hard. And then Mars is just amazing. So when you start talking about wanting to go deeper and staying there, then you really have to start rethinking how you go about keeping people alive, how you get them there, what your contingency plans and all that stuff is. So where we spend a lot of our time thinking about it is oxygen. So if everything lines up right and you hot tail it, you can get from Earth to the space station in 3 hours. And they do that sometimes. If you line up things well and you don't spend time hanging around in orbit, you can get to the moon in 3 days. You wait for Mars to come into the optimal time period, which is once every 2 years, I believe. You're taking 6 months. So it's a lot. When we talked about the Uber Eats and stuff like that, when you want to talk about oxygen, you can't just bring oxygen whenever you want. The space station, at its very, very, very best, recovers 50% of the oxygen that people breathe. Every 6 months or so, they'll send a spacecraft, a shuttle up there or something to resupply all the lost water and air that's lost in there. You start talking about staying at the moon or going to Mars, that's not a solution. So I guess one thing, any chemists in the room or people that, because this is, okay, so I am not. So I'm gonna talk about things, but one of the things that consumes the group I work with is how to make oxygen, breathing, people be able to breathe on these long trips possible. And in order to do that, you have to recover all of your air. So the very, very first step you need to do, it doesn't matter if you're trying to recover anything, you got to scrub that CO2 out of the air. If you hold your breath and you start feeling that panic, that's not your body wanting oxygen. That's your body saying you've got too much carbon dioxide, and you will die of carbon dioxide poisoning well before you die of oxygen, which is why on Apollo 13 that was one of the first priorities. So we've got, and I'll be talking about this next slide. We've got some really neat technology that I think even Scott Kelly would like as far as scrubbing the CO2 out, and we plan on when we fly it, we plan on bringing it out here so he can see that. It's called Searle. So the Searle grabs the CO2 out of the air. Okay, that's done. The next step is you have to start making that, recycling that. And there's a process called a Sabatier process, which takes that CO2, a couple molecules of hydrogen, and gives you methane and water. Methane is probably not very usable. Water, next step, you can break that water into hydrogen and oxygen. So you're starting to get to the good stuff now. But this is as far as the space station goes right now. So they end up 2 molecules of hydrogen here, but you need 4 for the Sabatier. So you end up that's why I say you end up throwing half of your stuff overboard. They throw this all this methane overboard because they don't know what to do with it. So the very next step that we're working on is taking that methane, breaking out into hydrogen and carbon. You do all your Xing out, and what you basically get is you breathe out CO2, and you get oxygen and carbon out. And I'll talk about that here next, the 2 technologies. So the first one is Searle's carbon dioxide by ionic liquid system. And what you just need to know is bad air goes in, good air goes out. And we have a loop of what's called an ionic liquid, which is basically just a liquid salt that takes the CO2 out of the air. It gets to here. We extract the CO2 from it, send it out so we can. This is what makes it regenerable, because the ionic liquid can keep on going around and around and around. So that's how we get the CO2 out. And then to get the methane into something that's usable, we basically cook it. So we start off with basically just a carbon felt puck, and we put it in a very, very high efficiency furnace with methane, and it densifies into basically a solid carbon puck. So what happens is when you go through all the systems, you breathe out, you get oxygen and this back. And that NASA loves this because it doesn't create soot. As you can imagine, when you're in a zero-G environment, any kind of soot is going to float around, get in, you know, people are going to breathe it in, it's going to get the equipment, it's going to cause all sorts of trouble. So these are the two things that we are working with NASA on to push the boundaries to make that whole stoichiometric chain I showed possible. And the next application of that is when people are walking on Mars. So what are the two things currently pacing landing on the moon? Everyone knows about the lander. The other one is the spacesuit. And that spacesuit, when it's developed, is going to be fantastic, but it's designed to work in a environment in a place with zero environment. Because what they have to do is they have to vent to a vacuum. So if you're on the space station or you're on the moon, no problem, you got a vacuum all over the place. When you're on Mars, Mars has a little bit of an atmosphere, which is difficult, but also NASA has what they call a planetary protection rule that says when you're on a planet or anywhere that may have life, we're not allowed to spoil any kind of life that might be there, to interfere with it. So we're not allowed to vent anything out there. So what we do is take that same SeaRolls technology I talked about before, where we suck up CO2 into the ionic liquid, and we break it out into two parts. The first part is what the astronaut carries in his backpack. And when that gets full of ionic liquid, you have to hoof it back to your habitat, swap out or change it out and do that. And so NASA, this is an active program. We're working with NASA because they don't have a solution for people to get around on Mars. And so they want to stay ahead of the game on there. We're hoping that in about 2 years, we'll have a flight demo ready to go, either on space station or somewhere out to prove it out. So it's kind of a neat thing to think when people are walking on Mars, they're going to be walking with our technology on there. And then, let's see, all of my show talks up for this. So when I'm done, feel free to grab a sticker. What we, in the space group, we like to call ourselves proud space nerds. And because that's what we are. You can make a lot of other, you can make a lot of money doing other things, but nothing as cool as what we do. We are really, really, we're geeked out about what we do in here. There's a long thing there, but if you just Google Honeywell Proud Space Nerds, you'll find a site where it talks about different technologies. They'll give like walkthroughs of things that we do on there. We brand ourselves in there, shirts, stickers, and it's not that I'm expecting you guys to buy anything from us. It's just for spreading the word. This stuff is really, really cool. I'm extremely fortunate to be part of it. And it's really neat to think that so much critical stuff is done in Arizona because anything that sends people up, we're going to have representation of things that we do here. I think that's it. So I actually made that a little too fast.
Questions for Joe. Please wait for me to bring the mic to you. Tom, did you have a question?
On the Orion equipment, how do you handle redundancy? Do you have like 2 of everything or 3?
Well, at least 2 of everything.
Okay.
So let me go back and I can talk a little bit about that. The answer is yes, and that's not unique to Orion. That's like a NASA requirement. So when you notice that there's 3 display panels. You really could get by with 1. There's 2 sets of hand controllers because the astronauts on either side can do that. the GPS receiver, there are two with three GPS receivers, 3 barometric altimeters. There's two each of the VMCs, and each of them have redundant channels in there. So NASA doesn't mess around, especially when you start talking about things breaking or things that can be upset by radiation. It's not a good look, and nobody wants it. So yeah, I think they learned the hard way. A lot of the close, scary stuff that happened in the Apollo days and the Mercury days, that redundancy is required everywhere. It's a good question.
Right? Excuse me.
Stan Morton, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you. You showed on one of your slides about scrubbing the H2O out. You sequester the carbon, but you just showed the H2 venting.
No, so the methane actually vents. So let me.
Coming at the bottom. Next one, please.
Oh, next one.
Yeah, this on the right.
Okay, so yeah, okay, so that's not venting, that's what you want used out of it. So you get methane in, and the hydrogen is what you want out of it. So let me,
Hydrogen's kind of nasty stuff. I mean,
it is nasty stuff, but if you're gonna close the circuit, you need to recapture that hydrogen to make more water. So I agree, especially like when we're making systems to handle hydrogen, you're never more careful. You're never more careful than when you're dealing with hydrogen as an input or a byproduct, because it can accumulate. It doesn't take much for it to go, and this stuff is the redundancy and NASA has very tight safety protocols for that type of stuff, shielding requirements, double tubing, all that kind of stuff, just for that reason. So I agree with you. It's not fun to deal with, but if you want to recover all of your air, it's a necessity.
I'll stay here on Earth for a while. I worked with Department of Energy for about 30 years as a senior scientist. We worked on some of this. Then later, I transitioned to what I call other 3-letter agencies. My favorite was OGA, other government agency. And we did look at sequestering some of this stuff. It's very interesting work. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I agree with you. We are setting up a facility in as we look to go from a 4-man system to something lunar to like 40. We're creating labs in our facility to handle hydrogen, and we've never looked at anything more closer. We're holding separate reviews, all that kind of stuff, because it doesn't take much if you don't do it right. You want to be there with the lighter to make sure that.
More questions. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. Just wanted to ask, because we have so much power going through a lot of the assemblies and a lot of machinery going in here, what kind of ways are you guys looking at to help cool down these systems out in space, or is just space and cool air a good way for it?
Yeah, you would think that with like the biggest heat sink in the world all around you, that heat would not be a problem, but it absolutely is. So like when you look on Orion, most of the computing stuff sits on cooling plates, which have active cooling on there. When we look at the space station, I talk about an ammonia tank there. Those sit on the outside of the space station, and they flow the ammonia around to cool things off on there. So yeah, it's odd because you're sitting there in the cold vacuum of space and you have to worry about keeping things cool. So it is a tough thing, even from within circuits. You know, anytime you have a circuitry, it's really difficult not to get things to where they have hot spots, they overheat on there. And it's an odd thing to have to deal with, but it's real. It's a good question.
Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Thank you. Great presentation. You referenced several times you working with NASA. I was wondering, do you work with other agencies, companies, and probably thinking about DARPA right now?
Yes, so we work with NASA on a lot of the hardcore, like the new technology development stuff, where we're pushing the boundaries. For Orion, Lockheed was our customer. We do have, not shown here, but I should have because of the astronomy, we're working on what's called a liquid mirror with DARPA. And basically it's exactly what it sounds like. You get ionic liquid and you spin it around for a space telescope, and it's meant to be impervious to micrometeorites because something hits there and it self-heals. It's easier, you can get a really big telescope because it's liquid, so you don't have to carry everything out there. You kind of can assemble it on there. So we do work with a lot of other agencies on there. We work with a lot of companies on commercial defense, and really there's anybody that's got a neat hard problem to work for space, sign me up.
Just wanted to add, if people don't know what DARPA is.
Yeah, DARPA is Defense
Defense.
Acquisition
Advanced Research Project.
Thank you. Yeah. And people say DARPA does not bring, I said hard problems, and DARPA does not bring you easy ones. Actually, that there's always people reference that something is DARPA hard, which means that it's not, there's a really good chance that you're going to try and you're going to fail. And that's fine because their job is to find things and push it. And the ones that do succeed, you've really pushed the envelope pretty well.
More questions? Okay.
Hi, so you talked about the pyrolysis and atmosphere and all. I was wondering what the atmosphere inside of the capsule looks like for Artemis, because we know we only have 20% oxygen in the atmosphere here. What's the composition?
Oh, so, okay. So you're talking about for Artemis specific? Yeah. So for that one, it's a short enough mission where we don't need any of that fancy stuff. We don't make the environmental controls for that. Same company that makes the toilet makes them. It's difficult, but you're just scrubbing stuff kind of like the Apollo days. You're not recuperating on there, but they do. I want to say that the environment, the oxygen content in the spacecraft is higher than it is on Earth. To the point where in the early days on Apollo 1, we actually lost 2 astronauts to an accident. And it was because they had charged the spacecraft with 100% pure oxygen, and there was a spark. And hydrogen's bad, but pure oxygen is really bad too. And unfortunately, we lost Gus Grissom, who was a Purdue alum. We lost him, and so it varies, but they tend to have a higher oxygen content on there, and I think a little bit lower of a pressure too. I think it helps them to adjust. It's easier to adjust on there, and it's easier on the spacecraft because you have a vacuum outside. The higher the pressure inside, you have to have a spacecraft that's strong enough to be able to handle that pressure differential.
Questions? Okay. Let me walk around.
How did they fix the toilet on Artemis?
A plunger. No. So the first time, and I only know this because I was watching it. The first time, it never worked right the first time. They went to go sit up. You could hear Christine in the background go, "I'm following the checklist and it's not working." And they thought that the tube that was coming from it was frozen, and they found that wasn't the case. They rebooted it a couple times, and in the end, they had to end up using what they'd used in the Apollo days, which was not a toilet, but they were kind of bags. They're emergency, and it wouldn't be pleasant, but it was, and so the good news is that it only affected their ability to go number 1. They were all good on number 2, which I think if I had to use a bag, That'd be my preference. So I think in the end, they vented it. They had some troubles venting things out to space. I think they finally got it, but I don't know the exact, but like we were talking about redundancy, they have redundancy for that. Toilet doesn't work, you got a backup system on there.
Any more questions for Joe? Oh,
This is from Tricia Online, so two parts. How will long-range missions deal with the radiation exposure? And are there plans to create gravity while traveling in space?
Both really good questions. As far as the radiation, I'm sure most of you guys have read Project Hail Mary. It'd be great if we had the astrophage that you could have around there sucking up there. That's not there. To a certain extent, you can put barriers up on there around there to deflect the radiation, some shielding. One of the things that we're looking at when we talked about creating these solid carbon pucks is maybe the pucks could be used to help radiation. But in the end, I guess there's going to be a certain level of radiation that astronauts get. And that's one of the things that they're using the space station for, is to get an idea of how, those guys up there, they're not the Mercury fighter, test pilots, but they're guinea pigs in a lot of ways. The guys that are spending a year out there, they take them down and they look to see how things have impacted them. The Kelly brothers, because they've got the exact same DNA, they loved it because they were able to see how the radiation impacted their exact DNA. That's one of the big questions for Mars, is when you start talking about a year or 2 year mission in deep space, what's it going to do to people? And I don't think we know all the answers yet. Second question was recreating gravity. Okay, so there is, NASA has a program right now called the Commercial LEO Destinations, where they're trying to replace the space station is only supposed to last till 2030, 2031. After that, they want to replace it with a commercial space station. There's a number of different companies that are competing against that. One's called Starlab from a company called Voyager. Blue Origin is going with Blue Reef. A company called Axiom is in there. And there's a company called VAST. VAST is unique in that it has not gotten to date a dime of government money. I think as a crypto billionaires funding it. But their long-term thing is they're going to rotate the spacecraft so that to create artificial gravity in there, both from an astronaut or whether it be an astronaut or a space tourist's comfort level and their ability to do that, but also for research so that they can sometimes, a lot of times when you do research, not having gravity is fantastic. The things they can build on there, the purities they can get in things is amazing on the space station. Sometimes you want it so answer is yes, it's not easy because you have to rotate and you have to stop rotating when you want people on there and that, but there are applications, there are people who are planning on it.
any other questions? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, thanks for your time on this. This is really interesting. One of the questions that I had was, you were mentioning you were kind of watching this. Was anybody on your team actually engaged while this project was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about during the mission?
Yeah.
So we had, it's funny that when we were getting the debrief, we had one of our lead engineers in Houston, not in the mission control, but there's a side room on there where they've got the squawk box on there. And anytime that there was a little blip or something like that, they would turn to him and say, well, what about this, right? And I was talking to him about it because our stuff worked really, really well. He's like, I was bored, right? I was bored. And I said, well, how about the company made the toilet? He's like, they were running around like you wouldn't believe. So yeah, they have representatives from the critical companies there in real time, because if something, and they may not know the answers, but they know get on the horn on there. Luckily, nothing in the mission, anywhere in the mission, met the level of where there was urgency or there was any chance that they were going to have to cancel, scrub the mission, or the loss of life on there. But that's part of the safety valve. It's a good question.
One moment, I'll be right there.
It was a great talk. Are you working on anything for Artemis 4? We're going to be on the moon.
Yeah, so the good news is that the Orion space capsule that's their bus to the moon. How they get up and down is they're still trying to figure out. On SpaceX's Starship lander, we will be involved, but just a little bit. SpaceX is pretty well known for wanting to do everything themselves. But whether it be their rockets, their landers, whatever, that's the way they do things. And if they need something, they'll buy the smallest thing they can from you and they'll build around it. So we're providing some small components on there. For Blue's lander, we will be providing a little bit more. Nothing as big as probably some of the other missions, because a lot of Blue's is based off of their commercial, their payload lander that they're building up on there. But we've already had talks with NASA on their plans for the moon, and a lot of that air revitalization stuff I talked about, we are going to sit down with them and talk about what that architecture is going to look like so we can start designing on there. So we're actually kind of more focused. We'll provide the spacecraft that gets them to and from, and actually we have a lot of hardware on the SLS, but we're looking farther to when people are on there for good, how do we keep them alive? And that's a lot of where our focus is at. Like I said, I can talk this stuff all night, so
Right.
I love this stuff.
Yep. Got another question over here.
I just want to ask, behind the electronics inside of Artemis, right?
Mhm.
Does Honeywell also help build the software that runs?
Yes, yeah. So let me go to that slide. So we actually support the core software used for the entire vehicle. It is based around a lot of the software that we used for the Boeing 777. We took that hardware and we NASAized it. You have to scrub it, you customize it. What should be a small little thing ends up being a huge thing on there. But yeah, so our software basically runs the NASA spaceship, in addition to the unique software that runs the displays. They have their own way of taking the inputs and making sure the display is right and everything like that on there. There's two things I'm not, as a chemist and an electrical guy. If there's a third thing I'm not, it's not a programmer. But we did do that and worked with some incredibly smart people that put that together. And as you can imagine, it had to be checked and rechecked like no one's business.
Any other questions?
Awesome. Thank you. And feel free, as I said, feel free, grab some for your water bottle or whatever like that if you want to be a space nerd. And if you got questions, I can answer all night. So thank you guys.